My sister stole my late husband's life insurance, then tried to turn his last gift to me into centerpieces, champagne, and a white satin wedding gown. I didn't scream when I found out. I didn't throw anything. I just sat in Robert's recliner and stared at the empty spot beside the fireplace where he used to leave his reading glasses every night for 36 years. The house in Columbus felt wrong without him. Too quiet, too clean, too permanent. 3 weeks after we buried my husband, I still found myself setting out 2 coffee mugs in the morning before realizing one of them would stay empty. Grief does strange things to your hands. They remember routines long after your heart understands the truth. Denise had been coming over almost every day since the funeral. My younger sister arrived carrying casseroles, grocery bags, soft smiles, and endless concern. "You shouldn't be handling paperwork alone," she kept saying. "You need rest, Maggie." She started sorting my mail, organizing bills, stacking sympathy cards into neat little piles on the kitchen counter. I told myself she was helping. Family helps. That's what I believed back then. One rainy Tuesday morning, I found an envelope from the insurance company sitting already opened beside my toaster. The flap had been sliced cleanly. Denise stood at the sink rinsing a coffee cup. "Oh," she said casually when she noticed me holding it. I thought it might be important. Something cold moved through me then. Small, quiet, easy to ignore. I ignored it anyway. Grief makes you doubt your instincts because everything already feels broken. Robert had handled our finances for years, but before he passed, he made me sit beside him at the dining room table with a yellow legal pad and a cup of weak hospital coffee balanced between us. "The policy is for you," he told me. "Not for emergencies. Not for family favors. For you. Promise me you'll use it to breathe again." I promised him. I remember the way his fingers trembled around mine. I remember pretending not to notice because I couldn't bear the fear in his eyes. A week later, he was gone. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was folding towels I didn't need folded. "Mrs. Ellis?" the woman asked politely. "We're confirming that your benefit disbursement was successfully processed." I frowned. "Processed?" "Yes, ma'am. Approximately 18 days ago." I stood very still in my laundry room. The dryer hummed behind me. Outside, a lawnmower droned somewhere down the street. Ordinary sounds. Impossible conversation. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "There must be some mistake. I haven't received anything." Silence. Keyboard clicks. Then the woman cleared her throat. "According to our records, the funds were transferred to the authorized account provided through your signed documentation." My mouth went dry. Signed documentation. Authorized account. I looked toward the kitchen where Denise sat scrolling through floral arrangements on her tablet. White roses. Crystal candle holders. Gold table runners. "Marcus thinks the ballroom needs more drama," she laughed without looking up. More drama. I thanked the insurance representative, hung up, and walked into my kitchen carrying a feeling I couldn't name yet. Denise smiled brightly. "You okay?" she asked. I noticed the glossy wedding brochure spread across my table. A luxury venue outside Cincinnati. Premium open bar. Custom dessert display. Estimated cost. More money than my sister had ever been able to spend comfortably in her life. She caught me looking and grinned. "Can you believe it? After all these years, I'm finally getting my dream wedding." I smiled back. Calm, quiet, polite. But something inside me had begun clicking into place, like puzzle pieces I never wanted to see connected. I did not confront Denise that afternoon. That surprised even me. 10 years earlier, I would have demanded answers before the coffee got cold. But grief changes the way you move through the world. It slows your anger down. It teaches you to sit quietly with terrible possibilities before giving them a name. Denise kept talking about linens and flower arches while I rinsed the same dinner plate twice without noticing. "Marcus wants a live jazz trio during cocktail hour," she said cheerfully. Can you imagine? At our age. At our age. I almost laughed at that. We were 2 women in our 60s standing in my kitchen, one planning a dream wedding, the other still unable to donate her husband's winter coat because it smelled faintly like cedar aftershave and old books. That night, after Denise left, I opened Robert's desk drawer for the first time since the funeral. The wood stuck slightly, just like it always had during humid Ohio summers. Inside, everything was painfully organized. Pens aligned, tax folders labeled, a small notebook with his square, steady handwriting. Robert believed in lists. Grocery lists, repair lists, vacation budgets calculated down to the last gallon of gas. I found the insurance folder exactly where he said it would be. Blue tab, left side drawer. Simple, predictable. Robert. My hands trembled as I opened it. The beneficiary page still listed my name clearly. Margaret and Ellis. 100%. No confusion. No shared access. No alternate account. I sat there beneath the warm glow of his desk lamp, reading the paperwork 3 times as though the words might rearrange themselves into something less frightening. They did not. Around 11 o'clock, my son Daniel called from Chicago. He had been checking on me every evening since the funeral, always trying to sound stronger than he felt. "How are you holding up, Mom?" he asked gently. I almost told him everything. The phone call, the missing money, Denise. But grief had already burdened him enough. He had lost his father too. "I am managing," I said instead. "Your aunt is helping with paperwork." There was a pause on the line. Small, barely noticeable. "Aunt Denise?" he asked carefully. "Yes." Another pause. "Just make sure you read everything before signing anything, okay?" I frowned. "Why would you say that?" "Nothing serious," he said too quickly. "I just remember she got mixed up with some debt issues years ago. Probably nothing. Probably nothing." Funny how families build entire disasters on those 2 words. After we hung up, I stood by the kitchen window watching rain slide down the glass. Across the street, my neighbor's porch light flickered on. Someone carried groceries inside. Ordinary life continuing without permission from grief. I thought about Daniel's hesitation. I thought about the already opened insurance letter. I thought about Denise insisting I was too overwhelmed to handle documents myself. Sleep did not come easily that night. Around 2 in the morning, I walked downstairs in socks and found myself standing in front of the refrigerator staring at a save-the-date card Denise had attached with one of my souvenir magnets from Maine. Elegant cream cardstock. Gold lettering. Denise Carter and Marcus Reed request the honor of your presence. The venue alone looked expensive enough to make my stomach tighten. I pulled out my phone and searched the ballroom online. Crystal chandeliers. 5-course plated dinners. Wedding packages starting at $35,000. $35,000. Denise had spent the last 5 years complaining about prescription costs, rising rent, and Marcus's inconsistent contracting work. She once argued with a cashier over a $2 coupon at a grocery store in Dayton. But suddenly, she was planning the kind of wedding featured in bridal magazines. I leaned against the counter and did something I had not done since Robert died. I allowed myself to trust my own instincts. Not my fear. Not my loneliness. My instincts. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The next morning, while the coffee brewed, I called the insurance company back. The woman from the insurance company spoke with the calm, practiced voice of someone who had repeated the same script 1,000 times, but every sentence landed inside my kitchen like a dropped glass. "Mrs. Ellis, for security reasons, I can confirm that the payment was released through approved authorization forms submitted under your file." I tightened my grip around my coffee mug. "What authorization forms?" There was a brief pause. Keyboard clicks. Paper rustling somewhere in the distance. "A supplemental authorization packet allowing electronic transfer to the designated account." My stomach tightened so suddenly I had to sit down. Supplemental authorization. Electronic transfer. Designated account. The language sounded professional, harmless even. But grief teaches you that terrible things often arrive wearing organized paperwork. "I never submitted additional forms," I said quietly. "And I never received any funds." The representative lowered her voice slightly, as if instinct told her this conversation had shifted into dangerous territory. "Mrs. Ellis, if you believe there has been an error, you may request copies of all submitted documentation." Request copies. Such a simple sentence. I wrote down the instructions on the back of an old grocery receipt beside Robert's cookie jar. My handwriting looked uneven, older somehow. After I ended the call, I sat alone in my kitchen listening to the refrigerator hum. Sunlight stretched across the floorboards. The world outside remained offensively normal. A delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere down the block, someone was mowing a lawn. Meanwhile, I was trying to understand how money intended to hold my life together had vanished while I was still learning how to sleep alone in a king-sized bed. Denise arrived around noon, carrying soup containers and bridal magazines. "I brought chicken noodle," she announced brightly. "You need real food." I watched her move through my kitchen like she belonged there. Comfortable, confident, familiar enough to open cabinets without asking. She set down a glossy wedding binder thick with color samples and seating charts. "Look at this centerpiece option," she said, flipping pages excitedly. "Imported roses. Gold mercury glass candles. Marcus thinks it feels timeless. Imported roses." I nodded politely while studying her face. Had she always looked this relaxed around my paperwork? Had I simply never noticed? Grief can make betrayal hard to recognize because you desperately want someone safe to remain in the room with you. "Denise," I asked casually, forcing my voice steady, "did you ever help me fill out insurance paperwork after the funeral?" Her hand paused for less than a second over a page of linen swatches. Less than a second, but I saw it. "Maybe a few forms," she said lightly. "You were exhausted, Maggie. Half the time you could barely focus." The sentence landed harder than she intended. Could barely focus. She smiled sympathetically, but something underneath the smile felt rehearsed. "Do you remember what I signed?" I asked. She laughed softly. "Oh goodness, who remembers paperwork after a funeral?" Then she changed the subject immediately. "You should see the ballroom menu tasting options. They have bourbon glazed salmon. Too fast. Too smooth. Robert used to say truth moves naturally, but lies rush toward the exit." That evening, after Denise left, I pulled my shredder bin away from the office wall, looking for old bank statements. Dust coated the baseboards. Robert would have hated that. I found folders stacked behind the printer and spent nearly 2 hours sorting paperwork across the dining room table, where we used to eat Sunday roast and argue about football scores. Checking accounts. Utility bills. Medical invoices. Sympathy donation acknowledgments. Then, buried inside a folder marked estate documents, I found a photocopy of a signed form I did not remember seeing before. My name sat at the bottom in blue ink. Margaret A. Ellis. The signature looked almost right. Almost. I stared at it for a long time beneath the dining room light. The curve on the M was slightly too sharp. The slant on Ellis leaned farther right than usual. Tiny details. Small enough for anyone else to dismiss. Not me. Robert and I had signed 36 years of mortgages, tax returns, school forms, and retirement documents together. I knew my own signature the way musicians know familiar notes. And this one felt wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Just wrong enough to make my blood run cold. The signature sat under my dining room lamp like a stranger wearing my face. I pulled out 3 old documents from Robert's filing cabinet. A property tax form. A retirement withdrawal request. Our refinance paperwork from 12 years earlier. I laid them side by side across the table. Same name. Same pen pressure. Same looping M I had written thousands of times. But the signature on the authorization copy felt hesitant. Too careful in some places. Too rushed in others. Like someone had studied my handwriting without understanding the rhythm behind it. My chest tightened. I wanted to be wrong. Desperately. Because if I was right, then this was no longer a paperwork mistake. It was something colder. More deliberate. I slept badly again that night. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up reaching across the mattress toward Robert's side out of pure instinct. My hand touched cool cotton. Empty space. Reality arriving on schedule. I sat up and listened to the old house settle around me. Furnace clicks. Refrigerator hummed downstairs. Rain tapping lightly against the bedroom window. Robert used to say houses talked more after midnight. Maybe grief did too. The next morning, I drove to my bank branch on Broad Street wearing the navy cardigan Robert always claimed made me look too serious to argue with. The young teller smiled politely when I asked about recent incoming transfers tied to my accounts. She typed for a moment, frowned slightly, then referred me to a private office. That was when my stomach dropped. Ordinary banking questions do not usually require private offices. The manager, a woman named Patricia with silver-framed glasses and kind eyes, invited me to sit down. I explained carefully. Insurance payout. Missing funds. Possible authorization confusion. I kept my voice calm because calm voices are taken more seriously than frightened ones. Patricia reviewed my account history quietly. No large deposit had ever entered my checking account. No wire transfer. Nothing even remotely close to the amount Robert's policy should have produced. "Mrs. Ellis," she said gently after several minutes, "if funds were redirected elsewhere, we would need documentation regarding the receiving account authorization." Receiving account authorization. There were those words again. Professional language wrapping itself around something ugly. I thanked her, gathered my purse, and walked slowly back to my car through a chilly Ohio afternoon that smelled faintly like wet pavement and fallen leaves. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. "Denise, do not forget dinner tonight," she said brightly the moment I answered. "Marcus is coming. We want you to see sample photos from the venue." I almost declined. I almost claimed a headache, exhaustion, grief, anything. Instead, I heard myself say yes. That surprised me. Maybe some part of me needed to look directly at the life my sister was building, while mine still felt paused between funeral flowers and unopened sympathy cards. Denise's condo looked transformed when I arrived that evening. Candles burned on the kitchen island. Wedding binders covered the dining table. Champagne-colored ribbon samples spilled across the counter beside imported cheese and sparkling water in tall glasses. Marcus greeted me warmly, proud and slightly overwhelmed in the way engaged men often look after discovering what luxury weddings actually cost. "You are going to love the ballroom package," Denise announced excitedly. She opened a folder and began flipping through pricing sheets with the confidence of someone spending money that did not frighten her. Floral upgrades, premium lighting, signature cocktail menu. I sat quietly, listening, watching. Then Denise pointed casually toward a payment confirmation clipped inside her binder. "Thankfully, we already handled the initial deposit," she said. Handled. Such an innocent word. My eyes dropped to the paperwork. The deposit amount alone exceeded what Denise once called an outrageous luxury purchase when I bought Robert a $700 recliner for his arthritis. $700. I remembered the argument because she had laughed for 10 minutes about anyone spending that much on a chair. Now she was approving five-figure wedding expenses without blinking. Marcus stepped into the kitchen to answer a phone call. Denise leaned closer and smiled. "See? Things finally work out if you stay patient long enough." I looked at her across the candlelight and felt something inside me shift quietly into place. Not rage. Not panic. Clarity. Cold, unwelcome clarity. I left Denise's condo carrying a paper favor box filled with leftover lemon cookies I did not want. She had pressed them into my hands with the same cheerful insistence she used when arranging centerpieces and discussing champagne upgrades. The drive home felt longer than usual. Streetlights blurred softly against the windshield. Columbus moved around me in ordinary evening rhythms. Cars lined up at red lights. Teenagers laughed outside a pizza place. Someone walked a golden retriever through damp autumn air. The normalcy of it all felt almost insulting. My life had narrowed into signatures, missing money, and a growing suspicion I could no longer push aside, while the rest of the world kept buying groceries and debating football scores. When I got home, Robert's recliner sat exactly where I had left it, angled slightly toward the television he used to watch every Sunday afternoon. I stood beside it for a long moment without turning on a single light. Grief changes shape over time. At first it is loud. Funeral flowers, sympathy casseroles, paperwork, visitors telling you how strong you are. Later it becomes quieter and somehow heavier. An empty chair, one toothbrush instead of two. Learning which silence belongs to the house and which silence belongs to loneliness. I sat down at Robert's desk again and opened my laptop. My hands moved slowly but steadily now. Fear had begun giving way to focus. I searched state records for property filings, business registrations, public wedding venue permits, anything connected to large transactions or contracts tied to Denise and Marcus. I did not entirely know what I was looking for yet, only that my instincts refused to sit quietly anymore. 40 minutes later, I found a vendor review page connected to Denise's ballroom venue. Package minimums, catering estimates, event deposits, numbers large enough to make me lean back in my chair and stare at the screen. Denise was not planning a modest late-in-life ceremony. She was planning spectacle, imported flowers, designer linens, premium bar service, weekend luxury accommodations for guests. The projected cost floated somewhere near what Robert and I had spent on our first home down payment decades earlier. My stomach tightened again. Denise and Marcus had not suddenly become wealthy. Nothing in their lives explained this level of spending, unless something had changed recently, or someone else's money had quietly entered the room. The next morning, an email arrived from the insurance company containing scanned copies of the submitted authorization packet. I almost did not open it. Some truths feel dangerous even before you read them. But I clicked the file anyway. Page 1 contained standard policy references. Page 2 contained banking information. Page 3 made my hands go cold. My signature appeared again at the bottom. Wrong. Not wildly wrong. Just wrong enough. But that was not the part that stopped my breathing for a moment. The designated receiving account did not belong to me. Different bank. Different routing information. Different account holder initials partially visible beneath processing stamps. DC. I stared at those letters until they blurred slightly on the screen. D.C. Denise Carter. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. I wanted another explanation so badly that it almost hurt. Then I noticed something else buried inside the timestamp records. The authorization forms had been submitted electronically on a Tuesday afternoon. I checked my calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Tuesday afternoon. The same Tuesday Denise insisted on taking me to lunch because, according to her, I needed fresh air and a break from paperwork. We had spent 2 hours at a small cafe near Grove City eating grilled chicken salads while my phone remained buried inside my purse because she said I needed to disconnect from stress. I sat very still at my kitchen table remembering details I had overlooked before. Denise offering to organize my documents. Denise collecting mail before I saw it. Denise encouraging me to sign forms quickly because legal stuff after death is overwhelming. Small moments. Harmless on their own. Dangerous when placed together. My phone rang suddenly, startling me hard enough to spill coffee across the table. Denise. Of course. I let it ring twice before answering. Guess what? She said excitedly. Marcus upgraded us to the ballroom crystal package. You have to come see the lighting mock-ups tomorrow. Crystal package. Lighting mock-ups. I looked down at the authorization documents still glowing on my laptop screen. My voice came out calm. Almost gentle. That sounds beautiful. And for the first time since Robert died, I heard something unfamiliar inside my own voice. Not confusion. Not grief. Strategy. I agreed to see the lighting mock-ups the next day because by then I understood something important about betrayal. People rarely reveal themselves during confrontation. They reveal themselves during comfort. When they believe the room is safe. When they think you still trust them. Denise picked me up just after noon wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream wool coat that looked newer than anything I had seen her buy in years. You are going to love this place, she said as we drove toward the venue outside Cincinnati. It feels elegant without being pretentious. Elegant without being pretentious. I watched farmland slide past the passenger window and thought about the last road trip Robert and I took together. Small motel. Cheap coffee. Gas station sandwiches. $40 spent on souvenirs we did not need. We had never confused love with luxury. The ballroom looked like something pulled from a bridal magazine. Tall windows. Crystal chandeliers. Polished marble floors reflecting soft afternoon light. Staff members greeted Denise by name. By name. That detail lodged quietly in my chest. Familiar clients are usually paying clients. Denise moved through the space with effortless ownership. We upgraded the lighting package. She explained proudly to the coordinator. I want warmth without yellow tones. Warmth without yellow tones. I stood beneath a chandelier worth more than my first car and listened to my sister discuss lighting temperatures while scanned authorization documents waited inside my handbag. Marcus joined us 20 minutes later carrying coffee cups and smiling with exhausted enthusiasm. Can you believe this place? He asked me. Denise found an unbelievable arrangement. Arrangement. Interesting word choice. Not deal. Not savings. Arrangement. The coordinator spread invoices across a glass table to review floral placement, catering counts, and remaining balances. Denise shifted the paperwork slightly when she noticed me glancing toward the numbers. Too quickly. Too casually. But not quickly enough. I saw enough digits to make my pulse slow down instead of speed up. Because certainty changes fear into something sharper. More useful. During a tour of the reception hall, Marcus wandered ahead with the venue manager discussing music options. Denise and I lingered near a display table set with champagne flutes and folded ivory napkins. You seem quiet today, she said lightly. I looked at her profile against the ballroom windows. My sister. The woman who taught me how to braid hair when I was 8. The woman who held my hand during our mother's funeral. The woman who now smelled faintly of expensive perfume and fresh peonies while standing inside a wedding budget built on questions she hoped I would never ask. Just tired, I replied. Some days still feel strange without Robert. For a brief moment, her expression softened. Real softness. Or perhaps guilt wearing a familiar mask. You are stronger than you know, Maggie, she said quietly. You would be surprised what people can survive. I nearly answered, you would be surprised what people eventually notice. But I did not. Instead, I nodded and let silence do the work. On the drive home, Denise chatted about seating charts and honeymoon options while I watched gray clouds gather over the interstate. Hawaii. 5 nights. Oceanfront suite. She mentioned it casually, the way people mention grocery lists or weather forecasts. By the time she dropped me at my house, my grief had developed edges. Structure. Direction. I carried my purse inside, set it carefully on the kitchen counter, and called the one person Robert trusted more than almost anyone outside our family. Charles Bennett. Estate attorney. Friend for nearly 20 years. He answered on the 3rd ring. Margaret, he said warmly. How are you holding up? The question almost undid me. Not because of the missing money. Not because of Denise. Because kindness becomes startling after weeks of doubt. Charles, I said slowly. I need you to look at some paperwork. There was a brief pause. Lawyers understand tone. They hear trouble before details arrive. What kind of paperwork? He asked. I glanced toward Robert's empty recliner across the living room. Late afternoon sunlight rested across the armrest exactly where his hand used to fall during Sunday football games. The kind, I said quietly, that makes you question whether grief was used against you. Silence settled between us for one heavy second. Then Charles spoke in a voice that sounded calm, focused, and very awake. Bring everything to my office tomorrow morning. Charles Bennett's office smelled exactly the way I remembered. Leather folders, fresh coffee, and old paper warmed by afternoon sunlight. Some places refuse to change even when your entire life has been rearranged. Robert used to joke that Charles's office looked less like a law practice and more like a museum dedicated to tax deductions and quiet panic. Sitting there without my husband felt wrong in ways I could not explain. I placed my folder carefully on Charles's desk. Insurance documents, printed emails, signature copies, notes written in my increasingly cramped handwriting. Evidence of confusion slowly hardening into something else. Charles adjusted his glasses and began reading without interruption. Page after page. No dramatic reactions. No quick conclusions. Just the disciplined silence of a man who had spent 3 decades studying the distance between truth and paperwork. I watched his expression the way people watch weather reports before important travel. Tiny shifts mattered. A tightened jaw. Longer pauses. One eyebrow lifting slightly over the authorization forms. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. The office clock ticked softly against the wall. Finally, Charles set down the papers and folded his hands. Margaret, he said carefully, did you knowingly authorize electronic transfer to this account? No, my answer came immediately. Clean. Certain. He nodded once. Did you sign these forms? I looked down at the copied signature again. That almost version of my name. I signed documents after the funeral, I admitted quietly. So many documents. Death certificates. Property records. Banking updates. Insurance correspondence. Denise handled some paperwork with me. Charles's eyes lifted sharply at her name. Not dramatically. Just enough. Lawyers notice names the way detectives notice timelines. Handled how? He asked. I thought about kitchen counters covered in envelopes. Denise sliding forms toward me while coffee cooled between us. Denise saying, "You are exhausted, just initial here." Denise reminding me that legal matters moved faster than grief. She organized things, I said slowly. Explain what needed signatures. Charles leaned back in his chair and removed his glasses. That small movement scared me more than raised voices ever could. Margaret, he said quietly, I want to be very careful here. But this signature does not look consistent with the legal documents I have on file from you over the years. My pulse slowed strangely instead of racing. Confirmation does that. Fear thrives on uncertainty. Clarity carries its own colder weight. Charles turned his computer monitor toward me and opened archived estate files. Mortgage paperwork. Retirement planning forms. Updated wills. Years of signatures preserved inside legal records. Mine. Real mine. Side by side with the authorization copy, the differences became difficult to ignore. Slight changes. Wrong pressure. Awkward letter formation. Tiny fractures in familiar patterns. There is more, Charles said quietly. He tapped the banking information section. The receiving account details are incomplete here, but not invisible. He typed rapidly, cross-referencing routing data through systems I did not fully understand. Minutes later, he stopped typing altogether. Silence settled across the office. Heavy. Intentional. What? I asked softly. Charles looked at me with the kind of expression doctors were before difficult conversations. The receiving institution appears connected to an account opened approximately 4 weeks ago. For weeks. My throat tightened. Robert had been gone just over 3 weeks. Charles continued carefully. And based on available records, he paused briefly. The account holder information aligns with Denise Carter. The room did not spin. No dramatic collapse. Real shock is quieter than movies teach you. I simply stared at the legal pad beside Charles's keyboard where someone had written a grocery list in blue ink. Creamer. Printer paper. Dog food. Ordinary words existing beside extraordinary betrayal. Are you certain? I asked. My voice sounded older than I remembered. Charles exhaled slowly. Certain enough to proceed cautiously. Proceed cautiously. Lawyer language for your nightmare may be real. I looked down at my hands resting in my lap. Robert used to hold those hands during scary medical appointments. Tax audits. Daniel's surgery when he was 10. Small and large disasters survived together. Now it was just me. Me and a folder full of documents proving grief had not protected me from manipulation. Charles slid the paperwork back across the desk. Do not confront anyone yet, he said firmly. Not until we gather everything. I nodded slowly. Strange thing about betrayal. By the time evidence arrives, your heart already knows. It is your mind that takes longer to catch up. The strange thing about having your worst suspicion confirmed is that the world does not pause to acknowledge it. There is no thunderclap. No dramatic soundtrack. After leaving Charles's office, I still had to stop for groceries because my refrigerator contained half a carton of milk, mustard, and enough leftovers to feed a moderately depressed raccoon. I stood beneath fluorescent lights comparing soup brands while carrying the knowledge that my own sister appeared connected to money meant to protect my life after Robert's death. The absurdity of ordinary errands during personal catastrophe almost made me laugh. Almost. Charles called me later that evening. I started a formal review request, he said. Paper trails matter. Timing matters. Digital submissions leave fingerprints. Fingerprints. Modern betrayal comes with timestamps and routing numbers instead of lipstick stains and whispered phone calls. How long? I asked quietly. Long enough that patience becomes useful, he replied. Short enough that mistakes may still be visible. Mistakes. That word stayed with me after we hung up. Because people who believe they are getting away with something often become careless. Denise certainly seemed relaxed lately. Too relaxed. The following afternoon, she invited me to a bridal shower planning lunch with 2 of her friends. Come celebrate something happy for once, she said brightly over the phone. Happy for once. As though grief operated on a schedule you could simply outgrow. I almost declined. Then I remembered Charles's warning. Do not confront anyone yet. Gather everything. So I went. The restaurant sat inside an upscale shopping district lined with boutiques selling handbags that cost more than my first monthly mortgage payment. Denise arrived glowing with controlled excitement, carrying a leather planner embossed with her initials in gold. Her friends discussed floral themes, custom favors, welcome baskets for out-of-town guests. Money flowed through the conversation with casual confidence. Venue upgrades. Specialty desserts. Personalized cocktails named after the bride and groom. I stirred iced tea I did not want and listened carefully. Marcus keeps telling me to slow down. Denise laughed dramatically. But if you only do this once, why not do it right? One of the women smiled knowingly. At least your finances finally aligned with your taste level. Finally aligned. Small sentence. Easy to miss. I did not miss it. Denise smiled in a way I recognized from childhood. The smile she wore when teachers praised work she had rushed through. Satisfaction mixed with relief. During dessert, her phone buzzed repeatedly beside her plate. She excused herself to take a call near the entrance. The planner remained open beside her chair. I did not touch it immediately. I am not proud of what happened next. But grief, betrayal, and instinct form complicated alliances. A folded payment schedule sat tucked between seating chart notes. I glanced down. Venue balance due. Floral invoice. Lighting upgrade confirmation. Payment references. My eyes stopped on one line near the bottom. Initial deposit source. D.C. Event holdings account. D.C. Again. Those same initials from the insurance documentation. My heartbeat slowed into that terrible calm certainty I had begun recognizing lately. Denise returned before I could read more. She slid naturally back into her chair and closed the planner without noticing anything unusual. Sorry, she said cheerfully. Vendor chaos. Vendor chaos. I nodded politely and took a careful bite of cheesecake that tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Later that night, alone at home, I sat in Robert's recliner for the first time since the funeral. The leather creaked softly beneath me. Familiar. Steady. Safe. I looked around the quiet living room we built together over 3 decades. Family photographs. Worn bookshelf. The throw blanket Robert always claimed was unnecessary right before using it every winter evening. I realized something then that hurt more than the missing money itself. Denise had not merely taken funds. She had used my grief as timing, my trust as access, my confusion as opportunity. That kind of betrayal does not happen accidentally. My phone lit up with a new text message from her. A photo attachment. Crystal chandeliers glowing above beautifully arranged reception tables. Caption: Can you believe this? It is finally coming together. I stared at the image for a long moment before setting the phone face down beside me. Then I opened my notebook, turned to a clean page, and began writing dates, conversations, timelines, and every detail I could remember. If Denise wanted everything to come together, then so did I. I became meticulous after that. Not dramatic, not emotional. Meticulous. Every conversation with Denise went into my notebook. Dates, times, phrases that seemed harmless until placed beside bank records and authorization forms. Charles called twice that week with updates delivered in the measured tone lawyers use when facts are slowly arranging themselves into something ugly. Digital submission records had been requested. Additional banking verification was moving forward. Do not rush, he reminded me. People under pressure often reveal more than people under accusation. Reveal more. He was right about that. Denise seemed almost buoyant lately. Wedding momentum had transformed her into someone brighter, louder, strangely untouchable. She invited me to a cake tasting that Saturday afternoon. 3 weeks earlier, I would have invented an excuse. Now I accepted immediately. The bakery occupied a renovated brick building downtown filled with exposed beams, hanging Edison lights, and the warm smell of sugar and vanilla. Denise arrived 15 minutes late, carrying fabric swatches and apologizing about vendor calls. Marcus followed behind her looking tired but happy in the uncomplicated way of someone who believed he was building a future honestly. That detail bothered me more than I expected. I started wondering what he knew, or what he believed. The tasting table displayed miniature slices arranged on white porcelain plates. Lemon raspberry, salted caramel, almond cream. Denise discussed buttercream textures with intense concentration while I watched her hands move animatedly through the air. Those same hands had sorted my mail, opened insurance letters, guided paperwork across my kitchen table. Try this one, she insisted, sliding a fork toward me. It tastes expensive. The sentence slipped out casually. We both paused for a fraction of a second. Tastes expensive. Denise laughed softly and corrected herself. You know what I mean. I nodded and tasted cake that felt strangely flavorless in my mouth. Halfway through the appointment, the bakery consultant reviewed payment scheduling. Deposits, vendor timelines, remaining balances due before the rehearsal dinner. Denise pulled out her leather planner again. That planner was beginning to feel less like an accessory and more like a locked room. The consultant pointed to an upcoming payment deadline. Do you want to use the same account as before? She asked casually. Denise answered too quickly. Yes. Same account. Same account. There it was again. My instincts tightened quietly beneath my calm expression. The consultant typed notes into her tablet and moved on without realizing she had handed me another thread. After the tasting, Marcus stepped outside to answer a work call. Denise and I lingered near the bakery display window watching pedestrians drift through chilly autumn sunlight. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me unexpectedly. You have been different lately, she said softly. My pulse remained steady. Different how? Calmer, she replied. More observant. Interesting choice of word. Observant. Not sadder. Not distant. Observant. I smiled faintly. Losing your husband changes how you look at things. Her expression shifted briefly. Something unreadable moved across her face before she recovered her usual warmth. Well, she said lightly, I just want you happy again. Happy again. Such generous words. Such careful performance. That evening, back home, I found an email from Charles waiting in my inbox. Attached were preliminary records tied to submission timing and associated account activity. I opened the file slowly beneath the soft yellow light of Robert's desk lamp. Dates aligned with painful precision. Authorization submission. Account activation. Wedding deposits. Sequential. Clean. Damning in their quiet efficiency. I sat motionless for a long time staring at the timeline. Robert used to say numbers tell the truth, people spend years trying to edit. Outside, wind rattled dried leaves across the driveway. Inside, my house felt unusually still. I looked toward the framed photograph on the bookshelf taken during our 25th anniversary trip to Maine. Robert smiling beside the harbor. Me laughing at something I no longer remembered. Trust captured casually inside a summer afternoon. My phone buzzed. Denise again. A text message this time. Just confirmed the crystal upgrade and live band. It is finally becoming everything I dreamed of. I read the message twice. Then I opened my notebook, turned to a fresh page, and wrote 4 quiet words beneath the growing timeline of evidence. She thinks I believe her.